In the early morning hours of June 10th, 1999, in a quiet suburban neighborhood in East Hartford, Connecticut, tragedy strikes the seemingly happy and loving Silk family. But are appearances always as they seem, or is danger lurking just around the corner? I'm Colby. I have my two best friends with me, Laura and Marina, and this is Grim. All right, so episode 2, we made it. We got episode 1 out there. We came back for another, so obviously we liked it enough to sign up for number 2.
We're back.
So today we've got the story of the Silk family that I am going to be telling, and I think what we're actually going to do, because this is going to be a little bit of a shorter case, so we've got some time to actually chat. We were thinking of doing just some introductions, try to build a little street cred for ourselves. Why did we decide to do a true crime podcast?
Now, I think that we should let Laura go first, because if not, she's going to be so focused on what she's going to say, and she's going to forget the facts about herself.
Yes.
Oh, but see, if I go first, then I can't just say ditto.
You go first, Laura. Go ahead. Go ahead. You got this.
Well, okay. So I've been a fan of true crime as long as I can remember. I always watched all sorts of documentaries, and including cops, actually. And I also realized when we started this podcast and we were thinking about cases and we were talking about what to do, I was like, oh yeah, I have this book, Cries in the Desert, on my bookshelf in my living room. And that's about the toy box killer. So get excited for that and some episodes in the future. But yeah, I would say that's a passion of mine. Not the killing, but reading about it.
Now that's a really casual read about the toy box killer. Is that's what you relax by the pool with?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That or the fiction. I guess that would not be in the true crime category, but lots of murder mystery type things. So lots of murder
along the same lines.
Yeah.
That's
How'd
fair.
I do?
I feel like you got it all in there.
Do you know me now?
I'm really proud of you.
I feel like I know you, and I know that there's
Can you
something a little
feel-
off. You're a little twisted, if that's your bullseye reading, yeah.
Can you feel my anxiety? Because then you do know me.
I know you better than I did before, and that's all that matters.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to go next, Cole?
Yeah, I'll go next. So my obsession with true crime definitely started in my childhood. I have very vivid memories of my aunt babysitting my sister and I, and us watching Unsolved Mysteries. We were probably entirely too young to be watching these things, but we are the twisted ones, my sister and I. We literally sat there, and if they solved the mystery, we would boo. We were such miserable little children. We were like, boo, more crime, more drama, like we need more. And when
That's totally normal.
Totally normal. And then when it was unsolved or like the person was dead, we were like, yes, this is what we signed up for. Yes.
What is Unsolved Mysteries, right?
Wait,
So-
like you've never heard of the show?
No.
Unsolved? Of course. Like, well, let me tell you.
We're like, okay, so Laura's no longer on the podcast. We're so sorry if anybody liked
she,
her.
totally
reads, she
unrelated.
reads fiction crime, so please continue.
Okay. So that was basically it. I was a twisted child, and then later in life, my sister and I found out my parents knew some questionable people. So maybe someday we can do an episode called "People My Parents Know." I know
That's
Laura's quite
lovely.
fond of that name.
I was.
So maybe we'll do. I won't do any spoilers, but maybe we'll have some fun talking about the Freetown State Forest murders someday.
Oh, that's awesome.
Did Morbid do a episode on that? Is that part of that triangle?
I don't know if it's
The Bridgewater
technically, it is
triangle,
part
right?
of the triangle. It's one of the corners in the forest, but I don't remember if they did it in there.
I'm intrigued.
As a side, I think that's where Ash was driving through when she
Yes.
saw the screaming bloody woman.
Yes, that's what I
I
probably
think. Yeah, I think that's.
I have driven through that forest, and it just randomly just started flooding. Like it had rained a few days before, but we were driving, and then all of a sudden we were almost underwater. Like it's a very creepy place to be.
Wow.
Creepy.
So Marina, how are you going to follow that? What's your what are you about?
I don't even know if you guys know this story, which is hysterical. It's cool because we've been friends forever. But so I've been into all things spooky and haunted and true crime forever. And I was actually thinking about how in elementary school I played with a Ouija board with my friends because, you know, like kids who are 8 should be playing with the occult, basically. And I believe the Ouija board said that my mother was going to kill one of the students that we went to school with. And it also said we were talking to the devil. And me and the girl I was doing with, we got so spooked, and we spooked out so many kids in the elementary school. They sent out a memo that was like, there shall be no more Ouija board talk in this school. So I got that out of the way real early. And then in the true crime realm, I was a police explorer because that's the cool thing to do in high school. And then I majored in criminal justice in college and concentrated in criminal law and advocacy in law school. And then I did criminal appeals for 2 years as a lawyer. And I don't do criminal law anymore. And that is why I love talking about crime with you ladies.
And why you always say we should consult a lawyer.
Yeah, pretty much.
You have legit street cred then. We just like true crime. You
junkies.
have legit.
Yeah.
Let's not get crazy. Let's not get crazy. let's not give me too much credit here.
Yeah.
Okay. Happily.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else we want to chat about, or do we want to jump right in? Anything you guys watch anything good lately? Any true crime documentaries?
So you brought up The Girl from Plainville. And I was like, oh, I'm not watching it and haven't watched it. And then I started watching it and it is blowing my mind. It's blowing my mind.
I can't wait. I haven't watched it yet. My sister said she was watching. I'm trying to wait until a few more episodes air so I can binge it all.
I have not started yet.
Like the girl who plays the actual girl, they look almost identical. And I can't wait. So I think we should cover that case because I can't wait, being the actual true crime nerd. I want to read the actual court transcripts and the actual text because the show is great. But I want to know what is being dramatized and what is like the actual fact. Because you watch it and you're like, oh my God, that's insane. She's totally guilty. But how much of it is actually true?
I also wonder that even on the like true documentary, and I'm putting that in air quotes, the true documentaries, because it's all editing. Right. Like you can put it in any order. You can, it's like the news, but you can put it in any order. You can, bias it any way and whatever. Like I think making a murderer, right, wasn't that big about how they edited it and like the order they put everything. People were up in arms about like how they portrayed everything. So
it's all, it's all how you frame it. Yeah, it's all how you frame it.
Yeah. Well, I saw even editing episode 1 of the podcast, like we could architect sentences that weren't there before.
Is this what I'm actually saying?
Oh, I don't know. We're going to find out. Shout out to our sound guy, editor, and number 1 gremlin, my husband, Mike.
Woo! Woo! You're the real MVP.
Yeah.
MVG.
I'm sorry.
Oh. Most valuable gremlin.
I love it. Trademarked.
Copyrighted. We should probably talk to a lawyer, guys, about that.
We need to consult an attorney.
Can we hear about the Silk family now?
Yes.
I'm excited.
You guys are ready for this?
I literally know nothing about this case. I didn't, because you guys, I think, had talked about it and put it on the list, but I have
Colby told me
no
like
idea.
the base facts. I don't know like if excited should be the word that we're using to describe like our sensation towards this case, but I get it. I get the sentiment.
I'm gonna go with not excited, but the podcast is not called Grim for nothing, guys.
Correct,
right? So it's not like we're talking about sunshine and unicorns. Yes. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the Silk family from East Hartford, Connecticut. We're going to go back to the year 1999 for today's case. So a couple things.
Like Prince.
Yes, just like Prince, except we're not going to party like it's 1999. So Y2K is looming on the horizon.
Oh, I remember that.
Gas was $1.22 a gallon, if you can believe that right now.
No.
Wow.
All of us were in middle school. Mm-hmm. And the Silk family were, by all appearances, a happy family of 6. So who were they? There was Kelly Silk, mother and wife, 32 years old, so right around our age. Charles Silk, dad and husband, 39. And then 4 kids. Jessica Mullen, who was Kelly's kid from a previous relationship. She's 9 years old. There was Jennifer Silk, who was about 3, daughter. Jonah Silk, who was 2. And lastly, baby Joshua, who was 2 months old.
Oh.
Can I just say God bless them for having a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and I'm sorry, what was the last one? 2 months?
2 months. So they had 3 kids under 3.
Oof.
That is a tenuous situation in that house. Let me just tell you that
Is
right now.
there even a word for that? Like, I know if you have 2 kids close, it's Irish twins. Is there something triplets?
You would probably just say I have 3 under 3.
Just have 3 under 3.
And everyone would say, "Oh wow, do you need some wine?"
Bless you.
Yeah.
She needed some wine, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Anybody would with that many children. But just to give you guys an origin story for the family. So Charles and Kelly met at a singles meeting. So this is back before the days of swiping left and Tinder and Match.com. So they actually met IRL at a bar. Or actually, I don't know if it was at a bar. I'm just kind of adding that for color. It was a singles meeting. I assume one does that at a bar.
There definitely was alcohol involved.
There must have been alcohol. So they met in either 94 or 95, but they were married in a civil ceremony in December of 1995.
Civil ceremony. What is that? How is that different than? Is that a regular marriage or is that different than?
I don't know.
Just
I think
fancy.
so. I'm going out on a limb here and guessing. Marriage is like the actual Catholic sacrament. So people will call it marriage. But if you just get married with like a justice of the peace, you are technically married in the eyes of the state. But like the term marriage is like an actual sacrament with the Catholic Church.
Oh, wow.
So if I had to guess.
TIL.
If I had to guess. It's a grim fact.
Yeah. Guess I had a civil ceremony as well.
All right. So let's just lay out a timeline here, right? So in sometime at the beginning of 1994, these two don't even know each other, right? Mm-hmm. And then by 1999, by April of 1999, they have welcomed 3 new children into their life, right? Because Jessica was her kid from a prior marriage, so they kind of jumped right on in full force.
That's aggressive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Jeez.
So what were they like, right? So they, along with their 4 children, they were members of the Truth Baptist Church in South Windsor, Connecticut, so the next town over from where they all lived.
Did I used to drive by that by any chance
you did,
to go to
when
your
I
old
lived
condo?
in South Windsor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know that church pretty well.
Yeah.
Not from attending
I was
it, but
gonna say,
from
we have
driving
not,
by it.
we have not set foot in it. But.
So they were so active in their church that you could actually make a case for saying that their lives revolved around their church. So their fellow parishioners described them as a seemingly happy and loving family, and many of them actually admired the Silk family. They said that they would sit in church together every week with the husband with Charles's arm around Kelly, and she was often like, tending to the children, right, giving them kisses on the forehead, looking at them lovingly. I need to stop hitting this thing.
Talking with your hands.
Yes, stop talking with my hands. So
sit on them.
So neighbors would have described Kelly as a happy and upbeat person. She had some struggles with depression in the past, but she was on the up and up. By all accounts, she lived to serve other people. She loved to help. I had read that she used to cook weekly meals for parishioners, like some of the elderly and like
nice.
worse off members of the church, and she would actually bring them their food, right? So somebody who very much is in the service of others.
Did she teach CCD too? Because that's like the...
She did not teach CCD.
Okay.
However, her husband, Charles, taught Bible lessons, which I'm assuming is probably similar to CCD.
Correct.
Yep. So Charles was a devoutly religious man who loved God and loved his family. He worked at a commercial printing press in Hartford, and he actually used his printing skills to make vacation Bible school flyers.
Oh.
So his former coworkers described him as a quiet man who didn't really talk too much about his private life when he was at work, but they did note that he had this habit of coming into the office early, so he could try to put in the hours so he could leave early to drive his kids around to the places they needed to go. So
that's fair.
Talk about a good dad, right?
Yeah.
For the children, Jessica's really the only one who was old enough that I could find any kind of a description on, right? 'Cause 3 under 3, I couldn't really find too much about them. I'm sure they were all sweet, lovely children. But Jessica actually sang in the church's youth choir, and she attended Emmanuel Christian Academy. Friends of the family said she had an engaging, gap-toothed smile, and her resemblance to her mother was super clear. So I think for this one, what we're going to do, because there's no trial with this case, and you guys will see it's very clear why there's no trial, I'm actually going to just jump right into what happened, and then we're going to spend some time talking about why. Because I'm going to tell you, you're going to be mad at me. There is not a clear motive in this case. People don't really know. There's a lot of speculation as to why what happened, but
Nothing
there's
confirmed.
nobody can confirm exactly what happened. So early in the morning hours of Thursday, June 10th, at their home in East Hartford, Connecticut.
Is this 98?
In 1999.
99, okay.
99.
Prince.
We're partying like it's 99.
I'm sorry.
God.
All right. So it's early, like super early in the morning. It's sometime between midnight and 1 a.m. When this all kind of goes down in the beginning. So Kelly and her husband are asleep in their bedroom. Jessica is in her bedroom. Jonah and Jennifer share a room. And then the baby Josh is in his bassinet in his parents' bedroom. So sometime between like midnight and 1:15-ish, Kelly just starts stabbing Charles while he's asleep. He wakes up, obviously, in the middle of this, being stabbed by his wife at the time. And Jessica, whose room is down the hallway somewhere, she was also asleep. I'm imagining she was jolted awake by hearing her dad's screams. And I know he's not her biological father, but she calls him dad. So she heard her dad's screams, and she ran into the bedroom to see her mom holding a kitchen knife.
Oh. That is horrifying.
Yeah.
Yes, what goes through your mind when you walk in there and you see
you're
that
having
scene?
a dream or something. Like, you can't possibly think that's real. I mean, especially at 9, you're not like, maybe you would because you're watching Unsolved Mysteries. But like, you're typically not exposed to, you know what I mean? So,
No.
I don't know.
So she's in there. So her mom, so Kelly turns around and she sees that Jessica is in there. Kelly starts stabbing Jessica now. So Jessica gets stabbed 61 times.
Oh my gosh. And that's like, it's like a crime of passion.
And she's 9.
Oh my gosh.
She's 9.
I'm like, I'm disturbed to my core.
So when she's done, once Kelly is
61
done
times.
with Jessica, yes, it's definitely sip of wine time. So Kelly then, after she has stabbed Jessica 61 times, she starts dousing herself in a flammable liquid. I'm assuming it's gasoline, so I'm going to probably just say gas.
Kelly was dousing herself?
Herself, yes. So Kelly kills her husband, stabs her oldest daughter, and then covers herself in a flammable liquid.
Could it be like nail polish remover? Because I get really freaked out when I like paint my nails next to, I'm being serious, when I paint my nails next to a candle and then I use like nail polish remover and it's like got 50 labels on it that says extremely flammable. Maybe it was nail polish remover. Like pure acetone.
It could have been anything that went up in flames.
Just
I suppose.
hypothesizing. You said there are no facts.
So
Let me have my facts.
It is not clear to me if Kelly intended to pour gas on Jessica as a part of what was going on right now, but she gets some gas on Jessica. So Kelly lights the fire. Kelly herself ends up passing away from asphyxia from flash fire because she went up in flames. She's in this house. The fire quickly starts to spread throughout the house. I think you guys had heard me say that, a couple of the kids were asleep in another bedroom. So, I'm hoping and praying that they were asleep the whole time that this happened. But Jennifer and Jonah pass away from smoke inhalation and burn. So they were asleep at the time all of this is going down because remember, it's about 1 a.m.
Right. Wait, I'm sorry. Did Jessica survive?
Yes, she did. We're gonna get there.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry to like spoiler alert you, but I'm like blown away that I don't understand how she survived 61 stabs. And then you mentioned she got some flammable liquid on her, and I'm just blown away that the two kids in a different bedroom do not survive.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
So if we go back to the house, and Josh was in the master bedroom, right, where this kind of all started. Joshua's going to survive too. So there are 2 survivors from the family this night.
Joshua's the 2-month-old?
Yes, he's the 2-month-old that's in the bassinet.
Because he was in the room, wasn't he?
But I think
somewhere close, maybe.
From what I can tell, like Jessica may have met her mom somewhere almost in the hallway, like entering the room.
Yeah.
So I don't think the fire was lit directly in the bedroom. I think it was in the hall, which is probably why it spread like to the other rooms so quickly.
Okay. Wow, that makes a little more sense.
So somehow, while this is all going on against all odds, Jessica makes it out of the house and she runs to a neighbor's house. The neighbors, who are sound asleep at this time, are awoken to Jessica screaming outside and a strange light that they see on this person who is screaming. So they open the door and Jessica's literally on fire. So her hair is on fire. She's bleeding profusely. She's screaming hysterically. And the neighbors tell her to drop and roll to put the fire out. So they help her and they stop the fire. But when they get the fire to stop, they're like, she's still bleeding. What is happening?
Oh my God.
So they find out, right, like she had wounds on her, the open wounds that she's bleeding on or bleeding from. And as she's doing all of this, she's saying, my mommy had a nightmare.
Oh my God.
So I have such goosebumps.
So when you were saying, like, does she know what's happening? Like, her mind, the way she interpreted it was mom was having a nightmare. She doesn't know what's happening. And, like, help me. So the family, the neighbors who she had went to, I believe their last name is pronounced Prigge, Prigge. They're gonna be important in a little bit when we talk about some of the aftermath of this. But the neighbors were the assistant pastor, Chad Prigge, and then his wife Sarah. So they call 911. They tell the operators exactly like where the rooms are in the house, because they're familiar with this family, right? Because this family goes to their church. So they tell them, but by the time fire, EMS, all those people get there, it's already too late. So that's kind of the night in itself. As the crime happens. Jessica and Joshua rush to hospital, separate hospitals. So Joshua was actually brought to Mass General. And Jessica was brought to Connecticut Children's Medical Center.
Wow.
Was there a reason that they were sent to different places?
I think just the severity of their injuries and like the specialists or the right care teams for each of the kids. Joshua did come back to a hospital in Connecticut after a brief stay at Mass General, but I think just from my own experience, I know like growing up in Massachusetts, when there's something bad or you need a specialist, usually you go to Mass General.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of the best in the world, I think. So
yeah.
Wow.
So after they recover, right, Jessica and Joshua, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. There are stories of people who were like tending to Jessica when she was in the hospital, and she asked what happened. And the person who was retelling this, his name was Aldo Vieras. He was a family friend of Kelly's. They went to high school together. So he's with Jessica. And she went through each member of her family one by one and asked what happened to each of them. And they had to break the news to her. And they said, like, for somebody who was as young as she was, like, she answered all of the questions of her when she was questioned. Like, she was super well composed. She's very, very impressive.
Wow.
She probably did better than most adults would, because adults would be trying to make sense of it. I mean, I'm sure she was too, but you can't. I mean, when you're 9 years old, you can't comprehend the evils in the world.
And that's not even like our typical, I say typical, like we've done 100 episodes, but like our typical murderer or something. This is not somebody who like was premeditated, coming, stalking them and whatever. So it's like a totally different, I don't even know, because I don't know the story, if it's evil yet or if it's like, I don't know. It's just,
Horrifying.
Poor family.
And so right after they recover, Jessica, her bio dad, actually shows up, and he is living in Minnesota at the time, and Jessica goes to stay with her biological father. Joshua, there's actually a very fascinating custody battle that happens regarding who Joshua's going to be with. And the neighbors, right, the Prigge family I mentioned, so they are the associate, or the husband, right, is the associate pastor at the family's church. And they said that Kelly and Charles had been talking to them recently. And they said, in the event that something happens to us, we want you guys to raise our children. We want them raised in the church. And, the Prigge family said that wasn't unusual, because a lot of people at the church asked them if they would take care of their kids in the event that something happened to them. So I don't know exactly how close to the event they did it, but Kelly and Charles actually changed their wills to say that the Prigge family would get custody of their children in the event that something happened to them.
Fascinating.
Oh, wow. And I mean, hindsight's 20/20, so we're looking at it, we're like, that's so suspicious. That's so weird. How could that happen? But you never know. That's why.
Yeah. Especially if a lot of other people did it. So,
right.
Like if that's a common thing.
Yes. And the guy who was with Jessica, right, Aldo, he was actually the one that was supposed to get custody of the kids before the change to the will. Because I had mentioned he was Kelly's really good friend from high school. From what I could tell, they stayed in contact over the years. They were still friends at the time that this tragedy occurred. And so he was saying, like, no, these were Kelly's wishes. And ultimately, the court did end up ruling in favor of the Vieira family instead of the Prigges. It's interesting because the will actually had the other family. But there were a couple weird things that happened, right? So first, this custody battle, it was drawn out. It was 3 years it took for this to get settled. So that the Prigge family, right, they're very tied in with this church, and there's a lot of interesting things about the church that we're going to get to. But there was mention that they couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't hit the kids if they acted out. They believed in corporal punishment. There was a lot of things pointing to something they called the rod of correction, which almost looked like a paddle that you would reprimand children with. So the courts were like, yeah, we're not going to put somebody in foster care.
I guess we'll talk about it.
Adoptive parents can't.
But like, as a Baptist church isn't typically like really extreme, is it?
I didn't know. So I tried to look up the church, and I know that this event happened in the 90s, right, in 99. So I don't know, like, it's different leadership at the church today. True. It just kind of sounded like maybe they're a bit less progressive than some other churches in the areas are now. They were very much like the Bible is the word of God and everything. Nothing trumps this. We do this.
Yeah, but it's also going to be, it might not necessarily be the church. You're going to get very specific types of parishioners in any sort of church. You know what I'm saying? So like if I go to church, amongst people like me, you'll have someone who's extremely devout who may use the rod of punishment, you know, in their home, whereas that's not my jam. So it might not be church specific.
Oh, for some reason I imagined the what is it? The rod of punishment?
I believe. The rod of correction.
Oh, correction.
I'm sorry.
I imagined it at the church. Is that not?
I don't think it was on display at the church.
So that's why I was like imagining you had like these kid speaks out in church. And you're like up to the corner.
No, apparently it's like part of the consideration process for when you want to be a foster parent or an adoptive parent. It's like something they actually review because they will not place children in homes that believe in corporal punishment. So it was a red flag.
I got it. Them. Okay. Yeah.
I think it's also very interesting that they just came out and said that. I guess if it's your genuine belief and you don't think there's anything wrong with it, you wouldn't think anything of telling like, you know, DCF that you're like, no, I totally believe in paddling my children.
The other thing that they thought was interesting, they said the Vieira family argued that Kelly and Charles changed their will under duress, right? Like they were not in the right frame of mind when they did this. Obviously, look what happened. So I think that may have played into the decision, but there was a licensed psychologist who was consulting on all of this. And interestingly enough, like she did say she thought both families would be warm, loving homes for the children. There were just a few things that weighed in favor of one versus the other. And then the larger factor was actually that Josh had been placed with the Vieira's family from the beginning. So they thought it would be more disruptive to remove him from that household and place him with somebody else.
I was going to ask that, like, if this took 3 years, where were the kids during this? So were they all with that family?
No, Jessica was with her bio dad.
Oh, okay. Do we know anything about him? Like why she didn't, I guess they probably didn't want to get separated, but why she didn't live with him or see him as much?
I think it was just like circumstance. I mean, he was in Minnesota and Kelly lived in Connecticut. Kelly was like born and raised in Connecticut, was in the military, I believe the Navy. And then shortly after she got pregnant with Jessica, she came back home.
Interesting.
So I think it was just like geography for why she didn't live with her dad. Sense. He seemed like from all conversations and Kelly's family members, like he did seem like he was a good supportive father. It wasn't like there was a malicious reason why she didn't live with him before. I think kids end up with their moms a lot of the time, right? So once everything is all settled away, I cannot find a lot of information, probably understandably so, about where Jessica and Joshua are today. Jessica does go by a different last name, right? Because she was from a different relationship, so her last name is Mullen. I found a blog that was jessicamullen.com. I have no idea if it's her, but I like to think that it is because the blog is all about this person who like grows through meditations and very much focuses on herself. And I like to think of that as the future like that Jessica achieved.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Joshua, I just hope he was so young that you know, not that nobody tells him about this, but hopefully he was just so young that he doesn't have like any mental or emotional scars from what occurred.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. I mean, and even if somebody told him about it, it's not the same as, you know, Jessica who lived it.
Who lived it and got stabbed 61 times.
That's insane.
Like, think of how small a 9-year-old is. Like, where it would be every square inch of your body.
How did she survive?
I have no idea.
Was it like was it like a paring knife?
No, it was a kitchen knife.
Oh my gosh.
It must have just, I can only imagine just like in whatever state of mind Kelly was in, like that blind rage or whatever was happening. Like maybe the cuts were not deep or just weirdly like she got lucky. Like they weren't in the right places for any of them to be fatal.
That's insane.
That's divine intervention right there.
Seriously.
Yes. So I told you guys not to hate me. I didn't want you to be mad. So why did this happen, right?
The answer is you don't know.
End of podcast.
Is I do not know. However, many people speculate that Kelly was struggling with postpartum depression. And in fact, she had an extensive history of mental illness, which included postpartum depression previously. I did not give you this grim fact earlier, but Kelly's mother actually committed suicide when she was 7 years old.
Oh my gosh.
So as a 7-year-old child, I don't know if Kelly was home, if she found her mother. I don't know any of that information. Nothing was available on that. But, you know, as a 7-year-old, you lose your mother to suicide.
Yeah, none of it matters. She could have been in Europe when it happened.
Yeah.
And that is going to affect you to your very core. And mental health is very genetic.
Yep.
So there's definitely a genetic component to that. So that's... Oh
So-
my gosh.
So Kelly's father never remarried after this event. So she was raised by a single father. He always had a steady job. By all accounts, he was a great dad. He passed away as well, unfortunately, from cancer in 1994. So right around the time that Kelly meets Charles, or shortly before she meets Charles, she loses her father. And from what I saw, neighbors who were in the area where Kelly grew up, like where her parents' house was, they said that like her father's passing really did a number on her.
She was
Like,
really young, right? You said she was like 32 in 99, right? So in 94,
yep.
27, that's
So go
really
ahead
young.
and do that math.
Yeah,
Do
I
that
did
math
it
real
quick.
for
Did you
us.
see it?
I did. I saw
No
the cogs
pause.
turning. Yeah.
So proud. That's really young to lose your dad.
So she loses her mom at 7, and then she loses her dad at 27.
That's really hard. And then you have like a basketball team worth of children.
Yeah. Yep. So there's, and again, we'll get there. I don't mean to do any spoilers, but there's not a lot of family support for Kelly, right? She doesn't have either of her parents who are around.
Was she an only child, do you know?
She wasn't, but that doesn't mean she was
boy.
in contact with her sister.
Oh, man.
So another grim fact about Kelly, this wasn't the first time she experienced postpartum depression. So she's got these 3 kids under 3, right? I'm going to lay out a little bit of a timeline for you guys here. So in 1997, there's Jessica and Jennifer for the 2 kids, right? Charles's family calls DCF due to concerns of Kelly's mental state and abuse that they had observed with the children. So DCF, they investigate and they determine that, you know, Kelly, nice girl, she had some problems with depression in the past, but she doesn't really seem to be suffering right now. So they said these concerns are unfounded. So they left.
Really
Case closed.
extreme. Imagine calling. Like, I feel like it would have to be a pretty dire situation to call DCF on your
Right. Like, what
family.
did she see?
Yeah. Like, I don't think you would probably talk to them first or try to figure out, or talk to Charles or something to try to.
See, you would because you're a reasonable person,
Sure.
but you have other people that will call DCF and say, I saw a kid in the supermarket and they weren't wearing a jacket and it was 30 degrees outside.
True.
And it's like, okay, well, kids can't wear jackets in car seats. Like, why are you calling DCF? Like,
Yeah.
you're approaching it very logically,
Yeah.
reasoned, well-reasoned.
Thank you.
Not always the case.
No.
Not surprisingly, shortly after this, they cut ties with Charles's mother. So now we are estranged from Kelly's parents,
gosh.
Charles's mother. I didn't really see much about Charles's father. I'm not too sure if he was in the picture or anything. So we're just going to assume it's very minimal family support that's surrounding them. So this is 97. By May of 1999, now we've got 3 kids, Jessica, Jennifer, and Jonah. Kelly actually overdosed on Prozac in May of 1998. The police were called to the home, but she survived the overdose.
Prozac is an antidepressant, right? Is that
Prozac
right?
is an anti-anxiety medication.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Which I can't tell for how long she was taking it, but
Right.
it was a medication that she was prescribed.
Okay.
So they were her pills. All right. So by April of 1999, she's got baby Joshua. And this is when she starts to feel the thoughts of depression creeping back in. Do you remember
That was
how
a haunted motorcycle, by the way.
it is a haunted motorcycle. Do you remember how I told you guys that she used to prepare meals for people at her church?
Yeah.
Yes.
So shortly after she had Joshua, she stopped doing that. So one of her friends was very concerned about her. It was out of character for her to just kind of lose interest in the things that had made her very happy, as people who are suffering from depression tend to do. So her friend talked to her and said, like, look, I'm concerned. And Kelly said, you know, you're right. I haven't really been feeling myself lately. Like I've been depressed. I don't really know what to do. So she did try to seek help. You know, her friend encouraged her to seek help. I think there were some other people within the church, like other parishioners that she had spoken to who had told Charles or her to find some sort of help for Kelly. So it wasn't like it was a secret that she was struggling with depression. She did try to get help from a associate pastor at her church, A1 Chad Prigi. So this same guy who keeps showing up, right? The neighbor, the person who wanted custody of Joshua. He tells her that, you know, this church doesn't really believe in medication, so you don't need that. What you need is you need to ask God for help with overcoming your depression.
We saw how well that worked in episode 1 with Joshua Komisarjevsky.
Yes. And actually, I only found one article that mentioned this, but it was in there, so it was a local paper, and I thought it was worth mentioning. One of the things that they found, like Cruz found when they were going through the wreckage from the Silk household, was a group of worksheets entitled True Happiness, Overcoming Depression the Biblical Way. Oh. One worksheet said, note how you have to change to be blessed. Evaluate how you measure up to the descriptions of the blessed man. Note when you are failing to be, and do the things that God says brings blessedness.
Which, as we said in episode 1, if that was maybe paired with professional help and maybe medicine
that fixes a chemical imbalance, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm wondering what the timing was of her seeking help from this Chad guy and when she changed her will.
I was thinking the same thing.
And when this ultimately went down, because now it sounds extra suspicious. I'm not saying it doesn't happen where they don't change the will because they want them raised in the church, but if this guy knew that she was struggling with the depression, I'm wondering if the court knew that, and that's one of the things that led to them granting custody to the other
because
family.
They felt that if something were to happen with Joshua in the future and he needed treatment, they thought that the Prigi family was far less likely to seek medical attention. So I do believe that factored into the decision.
Interesting.
So I think you guys are seeing a pattern here, right? Have a baby, go through a bout of postpartum depression. Have another baby not even a year later, go through another bout of postpartum depression. Have a third baby.
Doesn't it take like a really long time for your hormones and everything to get back to normal too after having a baby? Because if she had a child that duration in between, she would have been pregnant like 3 months after she had the kid? Like, that's insane.
There's no way her hormones went back to normal.
That's what I mean. Like, so it's not on top of what was sounding like pre-existing issues. Now you have your body like hasn't recovered in 5 years, or longer. So awful.
I think I read a statistic once that said that they recommend medically that you wait like 1.5 to 2 years to have another kid because your body needs that time to recover. And like, especially if you're breastfeeding a child, like you can get, like they warned me about this. They said, if you're breastfeeding for a year, when you stop breastfeeding, that's when you can get all the postpartum depression symptoms and issues that are normally associated with immediately after childbirth, because your body's, the hormones are completely different breastfeeding than when you're done.
I did not know that either.
That's a grim fact.
It is grim. So there's a pattern here, right? There is a repeatable pattern, and it is well documented, and many people are aware of this pattern that exists. Kelly she checked all of the boxes for somebody who was at risk of developing postpartum depression. Right, we've talked a couple times, 3 kids under 3. Her and her husband were both estranged from several family members. So what is postpartum depression, right? Because I found a lot of literature about this. And Marina, maybe you could shed some light on some of this, but it seems like something called the baby blues is pretty common. And it happens like a few hours to 2 weeks after you give birth. And it's like a period of time where your emotions are running wild. You could be irritable. You might cry for no reason. Postpartum depression is not that. It is like next level that.
My friend when she had a baby, she said the first 2 weeks after she had her son were the hardest of her entire life. And she said it was because of that. It was just this release of emotion, of hormones, of everything, and just awful. She said most people don't talk about it because you're kind of often home or in the core family for those first 2 weeks anyway. So that was the first I'd ever heard of even that part.
I read that your hormones, specifically estrogen and progesterone. Is that how you'd say that other one?
Progesterone.
They increase 10 times when you are pregnant, and within hours of you giving birth, they return back to your pre-pregnancy levels.
So I mean, think about when you're feeling like really emotional that time of the month, and then you add in like an extreme hormone surge, and then you add in complete sleep deprivation, and then you add in this fact that you're taking care of a tiny human that, like, especially for first-time moms, or if you're already struggling, like, you're taking care of this human. Like, I would just get up at 3 o'clock in the morning with my child and just weep, just sit there weeping while I'm feeding my child. Like, it's very...
You're really selling kids for me and Colby.
Yeah.
Like,
I wake
selling
up
it.
and just weep in the middle of the night by myself. I don't need a child to weep with. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I will say though, it's like getting a tattoo, which I don't think you guys have tattoos.
We either not have tattoos.
Okay, but for people that have
Who's
tattoos,
making the right
like,
decisions here?
it's so
I'm seeing a theme.
painful. And then like 2 weeks later, you're like, man, I need another tattoo because it's just great.
See, but we never went through the pain, and we still feel that way, you know?
There must be something to it though, because she's got 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And more than 2 tattoos.
And more than 2 tattoos.
I do have more than, and I'm afraid of needles, so must be something.
Just batting 1,000 over here. So postpartum depression. So it is a form of major depression that begins within 4 weeks of delivery. It is not known what causes it, but it's believed the condition is related to the chemical changes going on in your body, plus a whole host of other risk factors, which include having a genetic predisposition for depression. So if you have a family history of depression, you're more likely to develop depression. If you personally have a history with depression or postpartum depression, which Kelly did, you are more likely to develop postpartum depression. If you do not have a strong support network, which I think we know at this point in time, they did not have a strong support network to really rely on. And if you have stress in your life, you are at more risk to develop it. We didn't talk about this, but shortly before Charles met Kelly, he actually filed for bankruptcy.
Oh, geez.
And I did read that like financial struggles were a problem for them, not necessarily in the way that like they were going to file for bankruptcy or anything again, right? But probably in the way that like some of us will stress about money today.
Paycheck to paycheck kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What
right?
did they
Paycheck
do?
to paycheck.
What did they do for work again? Did you say?
I could not find what Kelly did for work. She may have been a stay-at-home mom.
Which could be its own addition to that problem. So
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The stress, I mean.
Yes, yeah. Well, especially
And
when she's at home with
finances.
3 kids under
Yeah.
3.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So grim fact for you, little thing on Charles here.
You're full of them, huh?
Charles, before he met Kelly, he was married. So Kelly's actually Charles' second marriage. Charles divorced his first wife because she tried to attack him in his sleep.
Wow. So this guy did not have good luck.
He did not have good luck.
Wow.
That's so unfortunate for Charles.
Right?
Yeah, what are the odds of that?
And shortly after they got divorced, his ex-wife moved to California and
Killed her kids?
committed suicide.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
Charles has a type. Charles had a type.
And a black cloud following
Yeah.
him.
Yes.
Wow.
Very ominous. So I am going to take a second here to say if you or someone you know is struggling with depression in any way, shape, or form, guys, please do not be afraid to ask for help. I personally have gone through struggles with depression and anxiety, and I know it can be really scary and really difficult to ask for help. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for assistance. Like, you are surrounded by people who love you, whether or not you think that they do, they definitely do. So what we're going to do is in our show notes, we're going to put some links, like the phone number for the National Suicide Prevention Line. We're going to put the phone number for Postpartum Support International, and just a couple of other things that we found out there. So just if anybody is wondering, there's a whole ad campaign right now that I've seen on TV that's really funny. It's about like encouraging friends to have the awkward conversation with their other friends. I see it a lot on ESPN.
Interesting.
And the whole punchline is basically that like having the awkward conversation up front is much better than the conversation. This is grim. It's much better than the conversation that you could be having at the person's funeral.
Oh my gosh.
So just
That's one thing about us, I have to say, is that like all 3 of us will get anxious or we'll have feelings, and we're just like completely open about them, and we just each talk each other through it. And I feel like our generation is getting a little bit better about talking through some of those issues and getting help, and help is far more accessible nowadays than it ever was. So
Yep.
Well, there's so many apps that you can download, and a lot of health insurances will cover them like totally free of charge. Because it's in the health insurance company's best interest that you remain healthy
and alive.
Your mental wellness, right? Mental health is also health, and we've come a long way in removing the stigma, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah,
agree.
So now that I'm leaving you all on this depressing note here, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. We hope you learned a little something, and we hope you stay alive so you can check out episode 3 next week. Follow us on Instagram at Grim Crime Podcast. Or if you have any suggestions for cases we should take a look at, shoot us an email. Go old school at grimcrimepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.